We are so excited to have you here with us. My name is Britta Glade, and I'm Vice President of Content and Curation with RSA Conference. So I'm the person responsible at the end of the day for all the content across everything, and I hope you've had an amazing week. Thank you. And it's going to get even better now, because you've got a really good speaker. Okay, I'm going to give you the quick flyby slide. Although, disclaimer, standard legal stuff. You may leave here wanting to be an F-18 pilot, and I can't be responsible for that one, but we're going to have some fun. Okie dokie. So, in my capacity, I'm always looking for interesting human stories. People that we can learn something from directly, indirectly. Sometimes the story is very obvious. Sometimes the story is something that you have to, look and you find something you have something in common with. And since we are right after lunch, you need to get some blood flowing. I want to stand up if you're a pilot. Oh, you aren't standing up. Come on, man, you're my guest. We have no pilots in here. So there's a whole different layer of education that we can do here. This is kind of exciting. How about people who've served in the armed forces? Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for your service, absolutely. How about if you're a parent? And our string wall downstairs, there were lots of parents. It took till day 2 to get a foster parent in there. But thank you very much, too, for your service, your continued service that will go on forever, right? Awesome. You all have something in common with Vishal, and there's layers of this story that I think are going to find different pieces that you have in common with Vishal. And that's kind of one of the things we wanted to get at in this discussion is there's a lot of things all of us have in common. There's a lot of things all of us can learn from others. And there's a lot of things that professionally we can maybe think about a little bit differently because of the very human experiences that we have. So without further ado, I want to introduce the one pilot in the room, Vishal Aman, who is, Vishal, I don't even know your title, Federal Sales, Microsoft.
I'm the General Manager of Security Solutions for all of Microsoft Federal.
There we go.
So thank you for having me. But in this capacity, I think,
You're
Vishal.
Vishal.
Right? I think
the F-18, former pilot.
Well, don't get my head any bigger than it is.
The dad, all kinds of amazing things here that we're going to discuss today. Super. We also wanted to keep this very much focused on you as the audience. We wanted to keep this super interactive. So whereas most of the other sessions you've gone to, there's been time held at the end for Q&A at the mic. We really want to, as you have an idea, if you have a question, we have some ideas of where this is going to go, but we really wanted this to be about you and answering your questions. So any questions that you have as you go, please feel free to join us at the mic, and we'll take it from there. But as with all stories, I wanted to start with San Francisco.
That's a great one.
Did you take this picture yourself? Were you supposed to be flying?
Don't take selfies and take pictures at the same time. That was the first time I was flying over San Francisco, and I was so concentrated on the controls back there, and then my buddy was like, "Hey, look, there's the Golden Gate Bridge, right?" And that was it. I was like, "Well, might as well take a picture." Right?
Yeah, because here we are. And I think we here right now are probably lower right corner underneath that wing. Go down. That's probably where we are at the Moscone Center right now, but kind of pretty on a nice, beautiful day.
Oh yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think I told you my story. So my oldest daughter was born the first weekend in October. Anyone here live San Francisco? Okay, what happens the first weekend in October every year? It's Fleet Week, right? Okay, so we were living in an apartment in Pacific Heights. The pilots use Geary as their flight line. It's really cool to have a newborn baby as the pilots are buzzing by and buzzing by and buzzing by. By about the 20th time, you were so tired of looking eyeball to eyeball with the Blue Angel pilots as they fly by. But that's the Navy, not the Marines, so I can blame them on it. That's not you?
Blame it on the Navy
not
guys.
you? Okay.
Yeah.
Navy. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. There's a really young Vishal with an awesome little family. Tell me what's going on.
When we were digging for slides for this presentation, I'm looking in this room, and I looked at this slide, I looked at this picture from years ago, and I was like, man, we were different people. Like my family was different. I come from a pretty large family. My grandfather was he lived in Uganda, exiled via Idi Amin,
Wow.
and his family actually, lived in a refugee camp. My family lived in a refugee camp, and migrated over here to the States via England, and came over. And this is a great picture of. I mean, I have 8 brothers and sisters. There's 8 of us, and 4 girls, 4 boys. I mean, everybody's really smart, right? Everyone's a doctor, except for the dentist. I don't really call them doctors. The academia doctors, I tell her she's not a doctor. And then there's the rest of the doctors that are there that are normal doctors, right? And it's good. And then there's me. So you have the 7 doctors, and then the guy who enlisted in the Marine Corps at 17.
But you're not
Yeah.
17 there.
No.
There was some early inspiration.
Oh yeah, there was a little bit of early inspiration. We lived in Orange County when my parents migrated here, and we all went to school everywhere and all of that. I grew up in a very humble apartment in Norwalk, right out in Buena Park, Norwalk area right there. And I used to be in Cub Scouts, and I used to love aviation. I mean, I had no clue what I was doing at that point. I think every single one of us, men, women, boys, girls, all of us, at a certain point in our life, when we're kids, we want to be something
I
really
wanted to
cool.
be a Siamese twin. For real, I wanted to be a Siamese twin, but it didn't work out. But anyway, carry on with your story. Isn't that a pretty cool? Yeah, but I
mean, when
couldn't
did that
become a
dream
Siamese
end?
twin. Apparently, when no one was connected to me, it was kind of a bummer. But I wanted to be a Siamese twin.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to do all kinds of things, like be a pilot or do anything. My youngest daughter, I asked her the other day what she wants to be when she grows up, and she said a princess, right? Like just many of our children want to do things like that. So that was me. I mean, there was nothing special I think about that. I was just happy, didn't understand what I was going to do with the rest of my childhood, and I ended up growing into, that normal frame of I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to go to school. I had that normal path, right, of progression.
And then things changed.
Oh man, so I mean, there was a few amount of service members in here, and do we have any post 9/11 service members in the room? So folks that served past 9/11, I'm sure there's a few. Thank you. In 1997 and 98, I was in high school. I played for the U.S. water polo team, and I was trying to go to school and play sports, and I had no backbone. And I came home, and my father, who didn't know what the military was, said, "Hey, Vishal, the recruiter is calling our home. I don't know what they do. Some military." He said he called it the Army office. It was the Marine Corps office, and he said, "Why don't you go down there and take your name off the calling list?" Right? This was during President Clinton time frame, and we didn't really have email or any of that. So I rode my bike down to the recruiting office to take my name off the calling list. I'm not a good salesperson, not a good buyer. I knew I was screwed the moment I walked in that office. I walked in the office, and that bike ride home, I walked back home with a 4-year enlistment in the Marine Corps. Now, granted, I was 17 years old, so I needed permission, and my mother was crying, and she was not having it. And my father said something real that changed my life, and I get goosebumps every time I talk about it. And I said, "Don't worry, I don't have to go. I still will be an engineer. I'll be a lawyer. I'll do something." And he said, "In this family, when you commit to something, you do it." He grabbed the piece of paper, he signed it, took me back down to the office the next morning, and next thing you know, I had a 4-year commitment to the United States Marine Corps. I mean, I wasn't built to be a linebacker or a Marine at the point. I was scared, crudless, right? But that's how my military journey started. And I think that was my dad, basic copier. That was me as a Marine. Yeah, Britta, you really helped me dig up some great.
Yeah, it's a baby face.
That was a baby. That's shaving all the time, and I mean, that was my identity, though.
Yeah.
Right in the military, that physical identity was who I was. Everything I did was that. I mean, I look at what we do now in the world of cyber and technology. I mean, there was no deep fake in that, right? that was raw, Vishal, in the flesh with my uniform on, and that's how I lived my life. I mean, I was like core country God, right?
So Babyface, how did you become comfortable in the service? How did you, you and I, as we were talking about this imposter syndrome, right? That's something that's discussed pretty regularly in our industry. How did you integrate in? How did you decide you belonged? It was okay for you to be there?
Yeah, I invested a lot of time in all the different things I did, and I think there was a piece of being part of something greater than yourself, and that's what it was all about. And you know, the story gets really dark later, right? And I think that's what I think about. But you have to want to affect change at a higher and at a bigger level. So, you know, do more good. You have to be able to do more good. And I think September 11th changed things for me. Serving in different capacities changed things for me. Being able to see, you know, death, and being able to see life, and being able to see different elements of infrastructure around the world. I mean, it forced me to commit to something greater than myself, right? It was very tangible, it was very physical. And I think that helped me serve more and more. And I like to say, right, best mistake I've ever made in my life, 21 years after the fact.
And I think this is a theme we'll discuss as we go through that vision. So you being able to visualize, see, and let's carry that on thematically.
Sure.
How did you decide to fly? Why did you get up in that plane?
It wasn't about, you know, it wasn't the new shiny object. It wasn't the next object down on the conference floor that was really cool that I wanted to go invest in. I actually got into it by mistake, and I wanted to fly.
This seems to be a theme too.
Yeah, I
the
failed
mistake,
everything.
By mistake.
I failed out of flight school 3 times. And I stood up on a board, and you know, I passed the board, and I stood up on a board again, passed the board, stood up on the board, passed again. And I ended up in flight school and selected Hornets, and then selected Miramar, and then I failed out of the F-18 syllabus, and I got back in. And I think at that point it was, who doesn't want to be, like when you go to flight school, who doesn't want to be Top Gun, you know, Tom Cruise sitting over there? Like I joke with all my helicopter friends, no one goes to flight school to fly helicopters. You go to be Tom Cruise. Maybe not Goose because he dies in the movie, right? And maybe not some of those other guys, but you go to take control of the aircraft, put some bend in the aircraft, and go, you know, drop bombs on target and go do all the dogfighting. And I thought, man, what a cool job. I mean, I don't think there was anything else besides, all right, I have the opportunity to do it. But you start investing in the mission, and you start doing more of that mission-focused work. And I think I was single, I wasn't married, and it was just me and the aircraft, and just a really cool opportunity halfway through my career. And you know, before I did this, actually, I was enlisted, and I was a military police, and I became a recon guy. And deploying and doing all of that work, I thought, man, there's folks on the ground that are getting hurt, that are part of this whole global war. I would love to do something to help them and support them, right? It wasn't, we were speaking to some amazing government officials this week, and one of the questions I was asked in my professional capacity was, hey, we don't need you to solve our mission. Like, we want to see it, we want to control, we want to be part of it. How do you enable it, right? How do you give that control to the person that can actually see, touch, feel what is actually at hand? It's not my responsibility in a professional capacity to effectively accomplish the mission, but maybe enable it. And I think when I was flying, I drew parallels from even the conversations I had this week here at RSA conference to maybe why I served, why I flew. And that's why I flew a really big sensor, right? I mean, that's literally all it was just a bunch of data.
Gathering a whole bunch more. Okay. So this was my favorite picture in all of the ones that Vishal pulled together, because it looks It looks just beautiful up there, peaceful, as if there's nothing going on and you're just taking a sunset cruise out there. This is where I want to talk about Top Gun, because who doesn't want to talk about Top Gun, right? Who has seen the latest Top Gun, right? It's kind of cool, and the music is going in your head, and so this is where, truthfully, if you have any questions about the pilots, any questions, I think that one of the Tom Cruise
Pilots
was one of your students, right?
He was, yeah, at Miramar. So I was an instructor down at Miramar later in my career, teaching people what not to do, because that's how good I was. And we found out through his wife that he was a Top Gun pilot, and or that he was one of the pilots in Top Gun Maverick. So he actually had a wig, put a helmet on. Top Gun's an interesting place, right? I look at Top Gun as this Super Bowl of that industry. And for those of you in the room, like when you think of Top Gun, you probably think of flying fast, shooting missiles. You know, we used to say, be good at 3 things. Number 1, your ground job. Number 2, you're flying. And number 3, your bar act. If you're good at 2 out of 3 things, you could stay, right? But if you're not, and that's what we thought of when we thought Top Gun. But in reality, Top Gun was nothing like that. Top Gun was about the mission. It was about learning sensors. It was about learning the technology. It was actually more. It was a master class to physics, to innovation, and then how that innovation impacted the end user. I know we're going to talk about it here in a second, but it was all about data.
Yeah. Tell me about the personas. Who ends up as a Top Gun pilot? Is it really all those cocky, I'm better than you, we're going to have?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. We have, the diversity is insane. Uh-huh. You would think it's people that just look like Tom Cruise or anyone like that. My front seater was a music major at Loyola, right? I was a political science major with a DE average in a state school. Now that shouldn't, you know, I don't expect everyone to feel good about that, you know, those 2 people were in a cockpit together at the weapons school, but it tells you a lot about what can be accomplished if you think differently. You know, Colonel Robillard and I, when we were flying, we went on our last op, and we had about 24 aircraft in the air, and we spent a whole hour and 15 minutes stacking the aircraft on top of each other, coordinating when the strikes were going to happen, sending all the imagery to folks, right, and talking on 4 different comms at the time, and making sure that we're talking our secure comms, and then collecting the imagery, and then setting the target. And right when it was time to strike, we ran out of gas. And we came back. And Toto and I were thinking of all these different creative ways and different ways to kind of get things done. And, you know, the short story there was, like, if we were anyone else, we probably wouldn't have made it out. But because of how we thought about, you know, policy, airspace, right? How he thought about how these aircraft come together. It had nothing to do with how good we flew the aircraft. It was us thinking out of the box and bringing that in to accomplish a mission. And I think diversity goes a long way in everything we do. In the cockpit, that's what it was all about. That's what it was all about, right? Different people, different ethnicities, different backgrounds. I don't know many. There's a few, right, that were born to fly, want to fly, but majority of folks that are doing it, they never even thought they would be in that cockpit.
So in Top Gun, when they're challenged with going through this canyon, and you're going to have to be flying at this level, and come up here and pull back, is it real?
Yeah,
could you do that? Could you be Tom Cruise?
I don't think I could be Tom Cruise. I don't think my wife's going to let me do that anymore. But those missions are real, and they're centered on real live events, real live scenarios, but they're pointed on, you know, an end state. In Top Gun, when they went through the canyon, I think there was probably a little cinematography in there, but for the most part, low altitude AIs are a real thing. And we still do those types of missions today, which is amazing. When you're in the cockpit, though, you don't think about it as, oh, this is really fun, I'm going through the canyon. You're actually in your sensor, you're looking down, you're popping up, you've got the 7 G's on you, you're pulling in, you're inverting, and then you're dropping the missile, or you're dropping the bomb, or you've got your missiles on the side or your guns to kind of come out, and that stuff does happen. But the dogfighting, not so much, but a lot of the air-to-ground stuff still exists, and a lot of the sensory missions still exist, right? And this is some of the things that we did in our deployments.
Great. Okay, let's talk deployments. Your first deployment, you were in the aircraft collecting data. What kind of data? Kinetics. What was the importance and the role of what you were doing to the larger mission?
So this is where it got really cool. So I mean, in the aircraft we had this ATARS, and it was a sensor. And think about some of the sensors that everyone in this room works with, right? It's all about what does it collect, what time does it collect it, what's the sensitivity of the data. I mean, this sensor actually collected imagery and all the other metadata around it to go real time transmit back to a ground station, and go do targeting. Go look for people, go look for high value assets, go take back and do some assessments on maybe on what the environment looked like, what you're flying around, and the level of imagery was very, very high. And that's what we were doing. And there was a lot of that data that we were pulling off from the different places we were going. I mean, my first deployment was in the Pacific, and we were doing that in that theater, right? And I had no idea what I was doing, though. Right? I was flying an aircraft, I was turning on a switch, and we were pulling the data up.
Oh, we've got a good picture of that. So I thought this was a really cool picture with some surf breaks. We both live in Southern California. Conversations about surfing. Some interesting surf breaks right up there off the tip of the land. Tell me about those surf breaks.
Yeah, I forgot about this picture. I was concentrating on the island so heavily to go drop the ordnance on the island. So those two dots on the top of the screen, those were my target was the island.
Anywhere on the island?
Anywhere on the island. I missed.
So they aren't surf breaks.
I missed. I mean, it tells you, like, when you concentrate on something sometimes, and that's all you look at, you can miss, even if it's right in front of you. I learned it the hard way on that day, but those aren't surf breaks. Those are me actually missing the mark and missing the target, and wasting a couple thousand pounds of gas.
But you learned. You learned something. It seems like that's a theme in a lot of what you've talked about. Is you fail is not a good word, I don't think, because it's learned. You learned through something that didn't go exactly as planned, and you moved on from there.
Right. Yeah, I definitely learned a lot from that. And then you go back in the community, we always say, what did you do good? And then what are your others, right? And we've incorporated that on my teams and what we do. And we don't say, hey, you did this wrong, this was bad. Hey, what were the others? And you kind of bring that to fruition. And I think that's something that we really cherished. And in the community, and one of these great individuals on one of my teams, the one thing he pulled out of one of the briefs we had was, hey, Vishal, like, the one thing I realized when we talked to all these pilots and we talked to these people he brought us around was there's no rank in the cockpit. Right? So when you're in the cockpit, you take your rank off and you call each other Vishal and Britta, not sir, not any of that. And I think in our community we need that, right? You take that hierarchical piece out, and there's all this reporting to function. But when you're in these zones, especially in what we do in cyber, right? It's important to act and not report. And there was no rank in the cockpit. There was no, take that emotion out. Mm-hmm. And we learn a lot faster that way.
Interesting. So your second deployment was in the South China Sea. Yeah, what were you doing there, and what were you learning?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to say, well, that was classified, right? But the same thing, we were learning about geopolitical interests in the South China Sea, right? We had a lot of Taiwan interests at the time, and where the different politics were. The one thing I didn't realize at the time was we were looking at, the physical islands, right, and how that was all working together. We didn't realize what was behind those, right? What the government was building, all the technologies behind it, the innovation that was happening behind it. We're concentrated on the physical element of people being there, right? And that was an interesting deployment because that was we realized at that point in time, 2012 time frame-ish, or 2011 time frame-ish, like it was just another deployment, right? The Middle East was happening. That was the next pump, and you know, it was a good learning opportunity to see where the buildup was happening, where the United States was putting some of their investment militarily.
Yep. Okay. So deployment 3, Central Command in Qatar, or how do you pronounce it? I've heard 3 pronunciations at this point.
I don't think you could. I don't think there's a wrong pronunciation.
Okay,
There's
excellent.
different
So Qatar,
pronunciations.
take me there. What's going on?
So this is where the data started becoming real. The data I was pulling off through the ATARs on that first aircraft, I realized when I was in Qatar, we were collecting that data there, we were assessing it there, we were utilizing it and pushing it back out to, and sharing it with our partner nations, with each other, with our field. And we're looking at the data and saying, okay, well, if we use this data for a high value asset, or here's the collateral damage ring. And when we talk about collateral damage, we're talking about human life, right? When you drop a 500-pound bomb or a 1,000-pound bomb, I think one of the hardest moments of my life at that time in my life was saying the words "cleared hot" from a remote place, knowing that you were about, you know, when those 30-plus 500-pound bombs dropped, that effectively you were responsible for the loss of life, the loss of infrastructure, all for the sake of the mission. And you're bought into that at that point. In my mind, I was at the apex of my career. I was one of the 2 ATAR SMEs in the Marine Corps at the time. I was a weapons school guy. I went to the weapons and tactics school. I'd served in the aircraft in the Asia Pacific region, and now I was taking all those expertise as an expert in the weapons system and that data over in Qatar. And for some reason, someone trusted me to make the decision that would effectively change someone's life forever. There's a lot of things that happened while we were in those moments, right? I married the woman of my dreams. We had my daughter. She was born while I was on deployment.
Oh, we're going to go there.
Oh, okay.
We're going to go there.
Yeah, that was but I mean, Qatar was amazing, but you saw it was like a movie screen. Like it was the size of this room, and when you sit there, think about a security operations center, and then put yourself in an IMAX theater. And then watching feeds and all of that from all over the world, and being able to take all that data, correlate it, and then make the decision to execute, and then watch it happen, will effectively change your life.
And the course of others. Okay, so the next mission, deployment 4, I believe, Horn of Africa.
Yeah, this is Squeeze and myself, and we were picture from another time back in the training squadron, but that was an interesting one because what we were doing was going into the Horn of Africa from Qatar, going up north, and on the back of that Qatar deployment, I was actually we started seeing ISIL and ISIS start popping up around the United States at that time, or excuse me, around the area of operations at that time. And we didn't understand who they were, what they did, but it was one of those things where we started getting sent for missions into the Horn of Africa to do a couple things, and then the next week we'd go north into Iraq and actually start dropping bombs and mitigating threats in country, doing a lot of sensory missions where we're taking the sensor and looking at the operations happening on the ground. I learned a lot about rules of engagement at that moment, policy, what you could do, what you couldn't do, where you could fly. You couldn't just see something bad happening and stop it. It's a lot different than when we see nation states attack us now, and to be able to immediately remediate right away and just stop the bleeding. Like, you couldn't do that, right? There were policies in place, there was boundaries in place, and even flying all the way to the Horn of Africa, flying around some of those geopolitical boundaries, and having the clearances to go over the countries. I mean, we learned a lot in Russia, Ukraine recently on how we interact with the Ukrainian government, how we empower them in every way, shape, or form. And these were some of the early learnings of that, right? Where do we put physical assets and people and data, and then how do we interact change or effectively achieve a mission, which was peace or freedom or whatever we were doing at the time, or capturing a high value asset. But that was a kinetic deployment from the aircraft, my first kinetic deployment from the aircraft.
Fifth and final deployment was also in the Middle East. Tell us about that.
Yeah,
some
so,
of
I mean,
what
this
you
was the-
learned and what happened.
I mean, in my mind, in this deployment, I was going to be in for 10 years, and we'll know why in a second why I wasn't. But this deployment, part of Marine Corps Special Operations Command, jumping over there and kicking the door in and doing hostage rescues or traps, or in Yemen, for example, in December 2014, the Macon Island was over there, and we sent a task force down there to grab some folks back unsuccessfully. I mean, this deployment brought it full circle. I can mention on this deployment, my son was born. I was in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and it was just me, my jet, and my son. And my daughter was born while I was gone. My son was born while I was gone. And being in harm's way with your family at home and all of that, that's where it hit. I mean, I was at the apex of my career again, right? I was a major at that time in the Marine Corps, and I thought, wow, like we're back on the ground, the sensors in the air, all the UAVs, everyone's supporting us, and we're doing our nation's bidding. And it was a great deployment, but what affected me on that deployment was being in a sensor and watching ISIS throw individuals off of buildings and do things that you would never imagine in your life. It was an unconventional way to fight a war. We thought we were fighting an enemy that maybe was a little more formal, but you realize there was no formalities when someone attacks you. And we use, again, conversations this week spurred into today. One of our government officials that was here this week said, when we use the word attack in our industry, what do we think about? What do all of you think about, and what do I think about when I say the word attack? Right? You think maybe nation states attacking you, maybe you're thinking maybe pen testing, maybe you're thinking your networks, maybe you're thinking infrastructure, you're thinking data. When we use the word attack there, we're thinking about human life. It's a different type of attack, right? It's a different framework of thinking, and that resonated with me at that point.
So you went from a guy whose family was your plane to marriage during this time, and this isn't chronological, it's not linear. That happened in the middle of second and third deployment?
Yeah, that was the first, second deployment-ish,
Yeah? Okay.
right? And we canceled our wedding and got married by Elvis, and off I went. And it was, imagine not telling your wife what you do for certain portions of your career, going off, coming back. She is the toughest woman I've ever met in my life, right? And there's a lot to that, but yeah, there's like, every single one of us has a job, but for me, our families are the biggest piece of it, right? If a nation state actor or anyone, that was when I left, when my wife was pregnant, and that was me with my daughter, and I think at that same time via video, meeting my son for the first time. And they're everything. And I could tell you that no matter if it's China, Russia, Iran, like any of these nation states, or the actors within these states and these nation state bad actors that come after you, I will put all of that aside and sacrifice everything to make sure that my family is okay. And I would argue to say that most everyone, if not everyone here, would do the exact same. All I could think about coming home.
Yeah, exactly.
All I could think about coming home was not ISIL, not ISIS, not dropping bombs, not being a Top Gun pilot, not any of that. All I could think about coming home was meeting my son for the first time when he was 8 months old. That's all I could think about. And it was, I think he's 8 months old. See, I miss their birth. I forget their birthdays now. They hate me for it, but I think that was about the range.
Oh, that's what I thought. I've waited my entire life to meet you. Welcome home, Papa.
Yeah.
Oh, when I'm still getting teary. The first time it came to me, I full-blown lost it. And this one, yeah. Okay, you've got the AV lady in tears over there, Vishal.
Yeah.
So,
We can move.
yeah.
We can
Well,
move.
the next
No.
one, actually, the next one that was interesting to me. So again, Vishal shared with me a bunch of pictures. We were figuring out the arc. Where are we going with this? I see this big, beautiful F-18 powerful thing. That is what this picture is to me. What was this picture to you?
I see the baby carriage on the left-hand side. That's what I saw. Right. It's a beautiful picture, you know, whether it's a Boeing aircraft or Lockheed aircraft, that's up for debate. But that was my family, my young family at the time, my father, and I saw the baby carriage. And the thing here is, like, we're all so focused on mission in all of our individual organizations. That is, it's in your face every single day, right? The mission. Yet the most important thing could be missed. And I didn't even think of that until we spoke about it.
Yeah, and I was like, it's security. Sometimes you have your eye on the prize. You have your eye on the big thing, the thing you're focused on protecting, the thing that matters the most. But
And-
the humanity.
Well, in
that
that,
gets
in
lost
that
in the
aircraft,
side.
yeah, and that aircraft is, for DoD, was mission, right? The big tactical sensor, that was the mission. But what we're doing there was empowering that baby carriage on the left-hand side, you know, and that's where my mind was at. So when I look at this picture, that's what I see. I look at my wife's feet, my mom standing next to her, you know, my father in his, just the same way he stands, and you can see in the silhouette, right? And then the carriage. And it's interesting how we can be blinded by the mission and not know why we're doing the mission. So it's always important to think outside of that box, and especially in our space now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, you talked to me a lot about PII. This is going to become important to the next phase of our conversation. Every time you were deployed, you would, your social security number is written on every
Yeah,
article of clothing, your blood
everything.
type is reviewed, next of kin contact points are re-verified. What was this process? Why and how, you know?
I mean, when you went down and or something happened to you, you had to know what your blood type was, who you were, who you weren't, right? You look at the dog tags, the ID tags that folks wore. On my flight suit, on my G suit, it was my blood type and my last name. On all my paperwork, I was identified with my social security number, my birth date, on everything, my full, middle, last name.
And we
Sometimes-
call it PII
Right.
in security. We all in this room know what it's talking about. You as a guy who's flying the plane, that's just what's done.
That's
to
just
take
done.
care of.
That's-
You didn't think about this
You
as
just put it out there. I mean, imagine walking around RSA conference with your birthday, your social security, your blood type, put that all on a suit and walk through the floor down there, and someone's going to say, who is this person? Like, what are they trying to do? But the realities are, in your line of work and in my line of work, it's out there. You're putting your TTPs out there. I'm putting my information out there. Whether I like it or not, it is out there. And everything I did in my career gave me that digital footprint. And think about this. This was 1997-ish all the way through 2015, which is what we're talking about, what we're going to end up at. And every little moment that I took in my life, there was some type of digital and physical footprint.
that all stitched together. And on a
Yeah.
day in 2015, things changed.
Yeah. So I was coming home. So I was coming home for the first time, and you saw the picture of my son and my family. We have 3 kids now, but we had 2 at the time. And I was driving down the freeway, and I remember it. It was March 21st of 2015. And I know that day because my grandfather had passed away that morning. And we were driving down the road, and I get a phone call from a buddy of mine from flight school. And he says, "Hey, Vishal, are you okay?" And I said, "What?" I was on speaker, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I haven't talked to you since I haven't talked to you since about 2006. So yeah, it was about 9 years. So I'm fine." I was like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, "You know what? I don't know how to explain it. Why don't you turn on the news?" And while he hung up, I looked at my wife and her face, and it was as pale as a ghost, like just fear. And she was scrolling on her phone, and she saw, there was another picture we didn't put in here, but she saw this, and then another slide, and down it were 100 people with their pictures, their names, the original list, had
Your
address, phone numbers, and it said go to their homes and go kill them and their families. And this was the time where the beheadings were happening for the Egyptian Christians, and it said go to their home and go kill them. We were escorted home that day by the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and our lives had changed forever that day.
How'd that happen?
Data. It happened because my identity was found and it was compromised through normal processes and email and reports, and that it was in the wrong hands. We didn't protect it while it was happening. In the course of that happening, outside of, imagine waking up every morning with a black car outside of your home. Imagine your wife and your kids screaming and sitting in the corner of the house because someone is there in the window, because that's what happened, coming to do harm at your home. Imagine taking a different route to school or to work every day. Imagine turning on your car every morning and every day before you put your kids in it, parked a quarter of a mile away from your house. That's the life we lived. And we were blessed because we had some amazing law enforcement individuals, Joint Terrorism Task Force, the Bureau, the local law enforcement, there with us.
You were evacuated from your home.
So this, you can look at the date. It took a couple of years for them to formalize this because it was the first time it happened. Now, OPM happened after and all of that, but we lost our home. We lost a lot of money in the home. We had to disclose that the home was targeted by ISIS. Imagine trying to sell a home.
Asterisk
and
disclosure.
You get to escrow and you have to disclose, hey, by the way, this home is targeted by the Islamic State. And I just put some this was just and then every time your data is found, years to follow, this is a couple years later, and we got some amazing senators and congressmen that helped us. Every time your data is found, they said, what's the material cost of it? What's the cost of a data breach? It's not just the $37,000 of moving costs or the $10,000 of here or the $500,000 that you lost in a home of real money after, you're not a millionaire. What's the cost of it? And every time your data repopulates, you get a letter from the DOJ. Still, I get them about once a quarter now. It used to be about 4 times a month. Once that information was out there, it was out there. And someone said, I'll address it now, why do you tell the story? Well, I didn't tell the story.
You were angry.
I was angry. And then I still didn't tell the story. And then I told the story. And all we wanted, I made it my life goal to invest in cybersecurity and effectively invest in how we look at this. How do we attach cybersecurity and data protection to the human element? How do we change the mindsets of, hey, what we do every day, what each and every single one of us in this room do every day actually means something. It's not just protecting revenue. It's not just your bottom line. It's not what's in Wall Street. It's that human life behind it. And we have to go home every day and we have to realize what we do matters. It has to be a function, it has to be just as important as all the Amazon orders that you make every night, right? Or the things that you do, or taking your kids to recital. So, this is a big part of why this is important, what we need to do, and
It's the big jet, and it's the baby carriage on the side.
Yeah.
It's the dad, it's the mom, that picture to me kind of encapsulated everything in an important way. How do you stay focused? How did you get from angry to progress, to movement, to deal. And I thought Carlo and the story of Carlo actually, to me, kind of encapsulated the how do I get to a good place?
And I know we don't have too much time left, but like I've got, and I'm happy to stay after and chat with anyone who's here. But Carlo was a guy, figuratively, that I brought. He was my Flat Stanley.
Flat Stanley, yeah.
He was my Flat Stanley. So for me, every time I was good and okay after an op, I send one of these pictures. These are actual pictures, and I send them to my wife and my family. And the family is how I got to a good place. You have to accomplish something great. We have to do it together. This was my normal. This was my son on the flight line, just eating his graham crackers. And it's awesome. Like our families are integrated in everything that we do. And they're, believe it or not, in what you do, you're not just here at RSA conference for the week. They are part of this, right? This isn't just you away for the week. What you're doing right now effectively will change and has changed already, whether you know it or not, how your family operates at home. Every conversation you've had here, every person you've talked to, any decision you make, anything you push forward, are you doing what is right? Brian Shantosh, good friend of mine, Silver Star recipient. I asked him. He has an amazing story. If you haven't heard it, I said, Brian, when you went and cleared 200 yards of trench line by hand after a turret gunner took out your team, how did you make that decision? He said, Vishal, just do the next right thing. Right? And we have the opportunity to do this. As we scroll through these, this is a picture of us bridging the most senior leadership at the time in country and showing them how to use a digital tablet to effectively take data and put fires on target, on time, and mitigating timeline and risk, right? And using technology to do it. So this whole story has been about the human, but I'm no different than anyone here. The difference is what we are doing together as a community is effectively helping us protect our nation. It's helping us innovate at the highest levels. And it's not just to have a stronger country or strong arms around us, it's to empower our legacy.
Individual.
Yeah.
This one, what was remarkable to me when he was showing me this picture and taking me through these pictures, this was him making a home in the desert. And I thought it was interesting that barbed wire and sand and all of that was a home that you were putting together.
Yeah, it's kind of like living inside of a firewall, you know? Like you're living behind the most physical and digitally secure barriers in the world, and that was home, you know, in the middle of nowhere. But I think we all can relate to this, right? When we want to be in our own areas at work, and we have this safe environment, and that's kind of what this was, I think, Britta.
And I wanted to end on a discussion with this element of sight, and you talked me throughout your career, throughout everything, as a pilot, but also now, first you need to see, then you need to mitigate, then you need to innovate forward. Can you, in our following minutes, just kind of close me through that scenario?
Sure. In the aviation world, right, we always say aviate, navigate, and communicate. And it's an aviation acronym. It's not a military thing, right? It's how you fly a plane. You keep the plane up in the air and you keep it going, right? What happens when something goes wrong? You get everything working again first, right? When the network goes down, when there is an incident, get everything working. Get that plane flying. Doesn't matter what direction it's going in yet. Then you point it to where you need to go. What do we need to do next? What are the next mitigation steps? Are we unplugging servers? Are we bringing in a team to go start doing some offensive? Are we doing other things, right? And then you navigate, and then you communicate. Then you say, this is what we did and why we did it. And I think you have to be able to see what you protect. You have to be able to identify it first. And I think that goes a long way. And a lot of the things that we're here to do at this conference is to have visibility. Think about everyone you spoke to, like it gives you visibility. You can see all your endpoints, right? You could see all your servers, you could see your network, you see your on-premise, you see your cloud. But you need to see it all before you can protect it. And I think that's, you start with seeing it, then you point to where you want to lead that horse to water. And then you say, this is what we did, this is what we saw, this is where we're going, and this is how we're gonna do it. And I challenge everyone as defenders of their own worlds and of their own initiatives, like, you have the power to go increase the visibility for every organization that you're part of. All this data that you own and are entrusted with, use it for good. Take it, right? Because being a fighter pilot and being a Marine and being a father is no different than being a defender in the cyber world.
Okay, good note to end on. So we're out of time. You're open to questions.
I'm open, yeah.
Anytime. You can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him in the hallway. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time at RSA Conference as a whole, and thank you for what you do for our community. You're very important.
Thank you. Thanks, man.